Welcome back to Morning Joe. Joining us now, Democratic candidate for president, Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota. Great to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Mika.
Want to talk about how it's going on the campaign trail, but first, I want to ask you about Labor Secretary Alex Acosta and his response and lack of apology yesterday when he held a press conference about the whole Jeffrey Epstein sweetheart deal situation. I guess some might be a little bit worried that something really wrong happened, and if he's not held accountable, something really wrong could happen again. What can be done to hold him accountable and get the answers to the questions that we need?
I don't think he should be in that job anymore. Actually, he has jurisdiction over human trafficking. I didn't vote for him in the first place. That being said, people need to step back and look what this is about. This is about little kids, little girls. The federal government has a lot of power in these kinds of cases, and he made a decision instead of pursuing a longer sentence, pushing this to trial. And by the way, there were a lot of victims. I'm sure some would have wanted to testify, and he could have also, they can subpoena victims to testify. I think he could have made a case. The other piece about this was the sentence, the fact that this guy, this billionaire, was allowed to work and go to his job to make billions of dollars 6 days a week. I think it's outrageous, and I think there was a special deal here, and that's why you see so much concern and a Justice Department investigation going on. And this story yesterday that, hey, he had to take it away from the local DA. I used to be a local DA, all right? And I am well aware of the long sentences that U.S. attorneys can get. We had one out of Minnesota involving 2 girls just recently, over 30 years sentence for sex trafficking. So this happens, and I just believe there's something very wrong about why this deal was made.
So, Senator, you want to be President of the United States, Chief Law Enforcement Officer for this country. Talk to people that see this story and see that the rich and the powerful live by a different standard, because we could blame Acosta and Trump. But it's not just Acosta. It wasn't just the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Florida. It wasn't just the fact that Donald Trump was running buddies with Jeffrey Epstein. You could say the same thing about New York. You could say the same thing about Bill Clinton being running buddies with him. You could say the same thing about we found out yesterday that the New York DA didn't require him to check in. The New York cops didn't require him to check in as a registered sex offender, that they actually went to court and tried to get the judge to downgrade him from a level 3 sex offender to a level 1 sex offender. The judge said, I've never seen anything. So this is more than Acosta. Acosta should be held accountable. But this is the entire system.
Exactly.
How do you fix this?
You have to go in, and I would do this as president, you have to believe you're going to do your job without fear or favor. And you want to put an attorney general in that's going to do the same thing, and U.S. attorneys, where they go to work and say, I don't care who calls me and who these people are connected to, I'm going to treat these cases fairly. And believe me, in my former job, I had this happen quite a bit. We tried to put a judge in jail. We were successful. But in the meantime, tons of his friends called me, said, hey, he's not a bad guy. And I said, you know what? He stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from a disabled woman. I think he is a bad guy, and I don't care that he was appointed by a Democratic governor. These are the things you have to do all the time as a prosecutor or as a president. You have to make sure you're looking out for the people and having their backs, regardless of how much money people have. And that's what really bothers me and so many other people about this story.
Senator, it's Willie Geist. Good morning. It's good to see you.
Hey, Willie.
I want to ask you about health care. And there are some voters who are looking at this large field of Democrats deciding which candidate to back, or maybe whether to abandon President Trump and to vote for one of you. And we're alarmed by some of the things they heard on the debate stage about health care, namely that some of the candidates on the stage would like to take away private health insurance and go with a government-run single-payer health care system. What's your position on the role of government in health care? Would you be for single-payer?
I am not for that bill because I don't think we should kick half of America off of their health insurance. I believe that doctors' creed, do no harm, At the same time, Willie, I think we have to make some major changes. The Affordable Care Act was a beginning and not an end. And if you want a bold idea is to take on the pharmaceutical companies, something that didn't happen during the Affordable Care Act. They actually kind of got a deal and moved on and are now charging increasing rates for things like insulin, simple drugs that Americans rely on every single day. My idea? We push negotiations under Medicare to bring those costs down. It'll bring the cost down for the system. We allow for less expensive drugs to come in from other countries to create competition. There are 2 lobbyists for every member of Congress from the pharmaceutical industry. They think they own Washington. They don't own me. So that's a bold idea. Adding a public option so we bring down the cost of premiums and move to universal health care. That's the way I think we should go when it comes to health care. It's taking what's good and building on it and creating a situation where we will move to universal health care, but not kicking people off their insurance in 4 years.
So to boil it down for a voter who's watching this morning, your idea is, listen, there's government health insurance. If you feel like you need it, it's there, but we're not going to force you into it.
That's right. And you can do it, by the way, you can have this public option, something that President Obama wanted to do from the very beginning. With Medicaid is one way that we really didn't look at back then. Or you can do it with Medicare. There's 2 good ideas out there, and either of them have some advantages. And I think that's what I would want to do as president, right in that first year. And the drugs from other countries, the safe drugs, I can order that as the president.
And
you don't have to wait.
Another topic you actually didn't get a crack at on the first night of the debate, but it was asked on the stage the second night of the debate in Miami, which was, would you offer health insurance, government taxpayer-funded health insurance, to people who have come to this country illegally? All the candidates on the stage the second night raised their hand and said yes. Would you offer health care to people who come to this country illegally?
You know, the undocumented workers that are here are going to emergency rooms. They are getting health care one way or the other. So I do think the California model that they just passed makes some sense. But I think the best way to do this is as part of comprehensive immigration reform, Willie, because until we get some order in this system, when we know we have 12 million people here, the people that are following the law, who want to work, that they should be allowed to work and have documentation to work and have a path to citizenship. And part of that would be starting to earn these benefits and, of course, getting health care from the get-go. But right now we have a mess. And if we did this, if you want to look at it economically, the forecast back in 2013 with that bipartisan bill, it would bring the deficit down by $158 billion. Imagine the money we can use on things like border security and helping those 3 countries down there so we don't see the chaos that we're seeing at the border.
So that kind of reform comes down the road, Senator. But for someone who steps across the border illegally, you believe they should be covered with taxpayer money right now?
First of all, I think we have to have border security. I don't think we should have open borders. Let me make that clear. Secondly, when someone is here and they have a health care need, yes, I think they should be able to access health care, or we're going to have a public health crisis on our hands. But the best way to
Senator,
get this done...
Can I interrupt for a second, Senator? You already said correctly, which surprised me that no Democrat on the debate stage said this. They already have access to health care. It is against the law for any medical provider, any hospital, any emergency room to not admit a patient in need. So if an undocumented worker, if an illegal immigrant comes across the border and has a hospital need, then they go to the emergency room and they have to be given health care now, correct?
That is correct, yes. And so that is why I have that position. Some of these other benefits, I think that would be part of earned citizenship. I don't think you should be automatically given those benefits.
Senator, it's Jonathan Lemire. A question for you on the census. Very briefly first, do you believe that the U.S. should ask citizenship status on the census?
And no, because the census, the purpose of the census is to find out how many people are here. And that question was thrown out over 70 years ago, as you know, and we now know why the administration is trying to put it on. It's for political reasons. We found that in the operative's papers after he died, in the Republican operative papers, and it's very clear, and that's why I think you see Justice Roberts at least throwing it back to the district courts and saying, you better come up with a rationale that's real. And now I guess you have the president looking for rationale behind every painting and under every sofa in the Oval Office. But the truth is they don't have a rationale. They originally had the Commerce Secretary and the Justice Department saying, we're going to go forward with the census. I know he says he's going to have another surprise for us this afternoon, but I'm very hopeful that surprise had better be, we're going to get the census out there and start. Because this is a constitutional duty.
Senator, I know you have to go, but on that issue, there's talk that this afternoon the president is going to suggest what his executive order is going to be. If he does issue an executive order about this matter, what happens next?
I don't think that's right under the law. I think that the census is constitutional. I don't think the president should be doing an executive order. I think it's going to end up in court, and it's just another reason that I want to be president. And I was listening to your earlier discussion with Guy Cecil. I think it's very clear that we need someone who is not just making a bunch of promises that they can't keep, that we have someone that's our candidate that sees themselves as not running for the head of the Democratic National Committee, but running for President of the United States. And that is, when you look at my record, I have the ability to get this job done. And as your previous discussion showed, that is what the people of this country want.
Very good. Senator Amy Klobuchar, thank you very much for being on. Come back soon. Good luck.
Thanks, Mika.
Up next, as the second set of Democratic debates quickly approaches, we'll talk to one businessman turned governor who has already thrown his support behind former Vice President Joe Biden. Morning Joe is back in a moment.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.